I'm Ahava, your host of What Did You Learn? I am so excited to have with me here today, Chris Hemphill. Chris is the VP of Applied AI at SymphonyRM. Chris, welcome.
Hey, happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much. I love your cool microphone setup, and you're all ready for it. So it's awesome.
I invested a lot of money to prep for this conversation.
That makes me feel the warm and fuzzies. So before we get started on, all the good meat that the audience wants to know about, everybody wants to know how you spent your time in quarantine. So did you A, learn a TikTok, B, learn how to bake sourdough bread, or C, anything else that might have been your fancy?
It's funny that you brought up TikTok because I learned Twitch over that time. And you see a lot of this musical equipment and stuff like that, synthesizers and stuff like that. So outside of work, one thing that was really fun to keep me entertained and still be able to play music in front of live audiences was to play music on Twitch. So I set up a channel and I wanted to come at it with a different angle. I didn't think that, there's another musician, another person playing their own music, but the angle was to read horror stories while at the same time playing music. So you have really creepy synthesizer built backgrounds and stuff like that, playing with a theremin and some of this modular synthesizer equipment. Just been really fun. And it taught me a lot of things that I actually do use in my career. So not TikTok, but Twitch.
So that's awesome. And you definitely win for most creative answer of how you spent your time. Where did you find the horror stories? Did you read classics or did you just, where did you pick from?
Started with classics. So started with The Fall of the House of Usher by Edgar Allan Poe. Turns out really, really, really hard to read, really long sentences. Everybody before Hemingway is just word vomit, really hard to read, but it was really fun.
I know not how to heighten the vague sentiments of which I had already spoken. While the objects around me, while the carvings of the ceilings, the somber tapestries of the walls, the ebony blackness of the floors, and the phantasmagoric armorial trophies. And then through the community, through the people that I was meeting by doing these streams, they had their favorite authors and people that they would suggest and want to hear read out loud. And through that found my absolute favorite horror and sci-fi short story author, Octavia Butler.
Yes, a classic.
Yes.
A classic. Scary, but a classic.
Indeed.
That's awesome. So tell us a little bit about what SymphonyRM does and how lucky they are to have your creative prowess at their disposal. What does a VP of Applied AI do?
Great. I love the question because what SymphonyRM does, and I think the gap that they saw when first founding the company was that there's all kinds of analytics out there. There's all kinds of data science, but what does that actually lead to? Knowing all these different covariates and different descriptors about patients or different descriptors about behavior and things like that, it's great to be able to predict some sort of outcome, but really what SymphonyRM was focused on is tons of analytics companies out there, not a lot of action companies. So the core of what they do is to identify based on historical encounters or based on past interactions, based on claims, based on various data sources, what should we be suggesting to help these people, help populations, help people better their care experience overall. So that's kind of our commitment at the hospital level overall. Where I kind of fit into the puzzle, I mean, a very well-oiled machine, but where I fit in is kind of there's this complex world out there. There's AI in my title, and what does that mean? There's all kinds of different definitions. There's all kinds of you can go deep into conversations about neural networks versus support vector machines versus all these different approaches. But what does it actually mean for the client, and how do we know that we're delivering well on those experiences? So my role is largely in helping healthcare leaders, helping educate healthcare leaders on AI, its uses, potential misuses, where things can go wrong, and ultimately that whole promise of being able to help people find the actions that they need to better their care. is basically to help health systems see where AI may be able to help fit that picture.
Talk to me about having a conversation with a stakeholder where you show them something that they really shouldn't be able to argue with, and they argue with it anyway. How do you get around? Because I think a lot of our audience has that issue.
Actually, like one thing that I want to help the audience with is to argue more and to ask more of vendors, because I think it's actually more dangerous to accept all the words from so-called data wizards at face value. There are, like, I would actually argue that there are questions that healthcare leaders can start using to tease out whether or not a model is performing accurately or is performing well. And that there should be a lot of education around, like we put out some video content around like how to ask about whether or not a model is performing well, or even how to question about whether or not a model might be showing a racial bias. So ultimately, I encourage people to ask questions, and I encourage people to question everything that they see. Be a skeptic. There's actually a podcast called Data Skeptic.
Right. So that makes sense to me. And I think that that's an important distinction, that, you know, the model is garbage in, garbage out, right? If the model isn't well designed to pull the right data or to translate properly, absolutely. You can be skeptical.
Yeah.
But what if you kind of know that this is pointing in this direction and you're still wanting to go in that other direction?
You know, so that actually, like, I was on one soapbox, but here's another one.
You have a different microphone for that soapbox.
Yeah, let me switch microphones for this different soapbox. But there's some give and take there. So I like part of where this whole like data education thing that I focus on comes from is that I want an environment where healthcare leaders who aren't as familiar with these practices, like to become familiar and become more comfortable. I think there's like for the doubter who is looking at, like, let's say that the research was very well formed and it was very well done. They didn't ask leading questions and things like that, and discover some insight about it. There's some education that needs to happen on their side. But as the person who's trying to sway and change them, what do we do about it? There's a whole field called data storytelling. And that's really the question of, what are we presenting? How familiar are the topics that we're presenting on and the methods that we're using? How familiar is that to the audience that we're using? There's some things that we have to check in our own approaches. Like, do we want to like there's really sophisticated models out there that might produce really accurate results, but not be quite as explainable. That's a problem with a lot of what you call deep learning algorithms. So one thing that we focus on is, who is our audience? What metrics or KPIs are like mean the most to them, and how can we communicate about that in a way that that is simple? Like what part of the challenge a lot of the time is, like, analysts sometimes shoot themselves in the foot because they want to show every detail and talk about every detail of the method of causal inference that was used. And sometimes it's just a bar graph. Sometimes it's just that simple metric that, like, you can be proud of all the confidence bars and intervals and things like that. But it's really like, I want the audience to be more educated, but I also want our analysts and our people who are using data to know the audience and know how to communicate.
So I just want to switch gears for a little bit, because I want to talk to you about machine learning a little bit. And,
awesome.
You know, so I have an Alexa, and every morning she wakes me up, and she's been waking me up for a while. And then I would, you know, get up, brush my teeth, do all that stuff. And then I would come out before I got dressed, and I would say, Alexa, what's the temperature today? And she would tell me. Anyway, in the last few days, she started to say to me, she's set my alarm. I've said, Alexa, turn off. And then she goes, good morning. Your morning routine is, it's going to be blank degrees today with a high of, you know, and she has learned that that is my routine and that is what I ask for. So my question to you, and when I told my husband this, you know, he gets up before I do, so he hasn't heard her do it. He goes to me, "It's the future," and he's sort of like, "Just wait until she tells you what to wear." And I'm sort of wondering from your experience and your ideas, A, how much farther can this go? And B, what is our capacity to tolerate this stuff? Because in a certain way, I'm like, I don't know how comfortable I am with this. Like, it's great. Why am I uncomfortable? And yet, for some reason, I feel like somebody's pried a little bit into my life and into my head.
You know, there's a bunch of different answers to that question. All of them are right, I'm sure. Somebody's my tolerance is going to be my tolerance to like how predictive Alexa is going to be different than somebody else's, and like different from my grandmother's or my mother's. My mother is surprisingly receptive to it. But when it comes to like how far can it go, this like given in the next year, I mean, not any kind of crazy advance, but as things increase over time, what is the acceptance going to be? If you were to take this experience that you have with Alexa and rewind to 20 years ago, Ahava, and like drop that in, how would that feel versus having gradually come up in an era with Facebook and all this social monitoring and everything like that, and kind of easing on into it?
So I actually love it in a certain sense, because when I grew up, and listen, I'm 45, I have no problem saying that. So 35 years ago, I would wake up, the stupid like white alarm clock with the, you know, not even digital, would go off, I would hit it, and then I would either have to walk outside or I would have to look at the paper and figure out what the temperature was going to be, or I would have to have watched it, you know, on the evening news beforehand with my parents or whatever. So I think this is great. I think where I'm getting stuck is like, she's been listening to me and she's programmed to learn this. And that, I think, is where I'm feeling like, because if I had said to her, "Alexa, can you, every time you wake me up, can you tell me the weather?" I would be thrilled. And I think it's incredibly cool. And I like want to talk to the designer, figure out how to teach her to learn this stuff. So that's my tolerance. And I think it's, you're making an excellent point. It's not binary, right? It's not some people are going to love it and some people are going to hate it. Tolerance is going to be different. What I guess I'm asking you is, A, where are we in 10 years with this type of thing, if you could predict? And B, do you see some more, because a lot of people have sort of become a little bit phobic around technology. Like, do you see us pulling back from the advances, or do you see us just like hurtling forward?
I see us, well, one thing that's really interesting is Neuralink, for example. That seems like a really, really, really big jump. The idea, so Neuralink, for anybody who not familiar, is
That would be me.
Was that, well,
I don't know what it is.
Here we go then. Neuralink is a technology developed by one of Elon Musk's companies. I think it's called Neuralink. But what it does is it actually, like, you know, you have your EEGs that look at like brainwave activity.
Yeah.
So this goes a step beyond that. This actually has a robot that that robotically inserts probes into your brain and detects like various movement like at the neural level to allow you to control a device or receive types of information. So
basically, it's turning everybody into a Jedi Knight.
Hopefully they choose the light side with whatever they can do.
Well, that's what I was about to say to you. And, you know, the other side is how do people abuse this stuff, which unfortunately we've seen happen, right? I mean, you bring up Facebook, they've abused that power, some would say.
So yeah, the question on preventing abuse, that's we always have to circle back into like, what can we do? Like knowing that there are going to be the like, there's a perverse set of incentives out there. Like things that are driven by advertisements, you usually go in service of the advertiser, and we're the product to the advertiser. I actually wrote an article about a year ago called Aim Higher Than Netflix. No shame on Netflix or anything like that, but as healthcare leaders and as healthcare marketers, as people who are employing algorithms that are like in healthcare, we have access to and deploy algorithms as well as these other companies that are like fishing for clicks. We're using these algorithms to help people make decisions to better their care. So the idea is that like as leaders, one thing that we can do is kind of be aware of where those things can be challenged, where there can be racial, gender, sex bias, and make sure that we're not contributing to the problem. Because there's like, it's a newer concept using algorithms, using machine learning and predictive modeling to say that this person is more likely to have this illness than this other person. New concept. So we need to be aware of the potential pitfalls, because if not, we're not asking the right questions and we kind of let that stuff perpetuate.
So my last question for you, and it's the question, what did you learn during the pandemic?
You know, what I learned was like, you know, my focus before had been really heavily on like data science and explaining AI as well. But I think I got in a rut over the past few years that, you know, I just kind of saw myself in one way doing just one limited set of things. But by going into a situation where I had to kind of reevaluate everything I was doing and like just kind of look at my own mental health and like what like not being able to go out and go socialize and things like that. What could I do? And learning this new skill on Twitch, like learning live streaming and video casting, everything like that. I took a lot of the learnings from that. So I talked about Twitch earlier, but there's a lot of just like how to behave on camera and how to engage audiences and how to make people, your community feel included and how to build communities and stuff like that. I think that as crazy and funny as it is to be streaming horror stories and stuff like that, took a lot of that and it's been really helpful in a career in a video series that we have running over at SymphonyRM. So basically, I just had to every once in a while, every few years, I just got to get shaken up and start thinking outside of whatever bubble I had put myself in.
I totally agree with you. Chris, where can people find you?
I think the easiest places are on LinkedIn. So you can just search Chris Hemphill on there. I post a lot of stuff there. And then on Twitter, I'm Luke Trailrunner, where I post a lot of snark and a lot of stuff about data science and sometimes about trail running. So,
and where on Twitch?
Oh, Twitch. Yeah. Musique Macabre. So Musique, Musique, Macabre. I hope I got it right, but Musique.
You did. It's one of those spelling words. Anyway, thank you so much for being here, Chris. It was so wonderful to have you.
Appreciate the opportunity to be invited to this. Thank you.